Hi, I'm Reva with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and today I'm sitting in front of the FOF Creative Icon. And in a minute, you're going to be able to see a little clip of how the Creative Icon performs as far as sewing. The Creative Icon is a sewing and embroidery machine combo. It's the top of the line for FOF. But if you're interested in a dedicated sewing machine, and maybe the embroidery is not for you, take a look at the FOF Performance Icon. It has the same type of features that the Creative Icon has, but just no embroidery. So in the next clip, you're going to learn about the dual feed. You're going to learn about the power of the needle piercing power of the machine, and you're also going to learn about different stitches and things like that. So just know that the Performance Icon can handle all those things just as well. It just doesn't have as many stitch styles, and it doesn't have embroidery capability, but it has a lot more. So hope you enjoy, and if you want to come in and take a look at the Performance Icon, just come on in and we'd love to show it to you. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is this little guy way here in the back. Do you see that? This is called a dual feed. It is a actual feed dog for the upper layers of fabric. So you can engage or disengage it, and can you see it has little teeth on it? So when I pull it down, it becomes engaged, and now it's an actual feed dog in perfect time with the lower feed dogs. So while you're sewing, and I'm going to show you just real quick what it does. So as I'm going forward, notice that it goes forward. If I go in reverse, it goes backwards. So it is bringing the fabric through at the same rate of speed, both the top and the bottom. And where that is really a benefit to those of us that sew is that if you're quilting, you're not going to have the fabric shifting, so your pieces that are aligned properly will stay aligned. If you're a home dec or a garment sewer, you're going to need less pins. You're going to find that your plaids or patterns match better because they don't shift off the top. And so I want to give you a little example of how that works. So I have some denim here. I know a lot of us have to hem. Hemming is a horrible thing. In fact, hemming is a no, it's not. Mend is a four-letter word. But this machine does a beautiful job. And actually, there are stitches in this machine that allow us to create a top stitch. I don't know, have you ever tried to hem denim or something and you cannot come up with a perfect match for the thread color? Well, this is a great way to have this wonderful stitch on here, so you can get it actually ends up looking more like the same thread. Ooh, I went really crooked. That's okay, you won't be talking on camera, you'll be paying attention when you sew. But it does a beautiful job of replicating that seam that you find on ready-made wear. Now, when we hem a pair of jeans, or we have to mend a pair of jeans and make them shorter, you have at least 9 layers of denim. And so what we're going to find when we sew is that as we start sewing, you get to this point and see when the foot starts to go up, that's usually when we start breaking needles or having issues. And the reason why is that the foot is tipped and it's not in contact with those feed dogs underneath anymore. So the feed dogs are here and the foot's like this, so there's no pressure on there. It's not being fed through. So with the pressure only in the back of the foot, then there's nothing drawing it through. So with the dual feed, it actually works like a 4-wheel drive. So it will just up and over the fabric with no problem at all. Now, a lot of times you have to make adjustments with your machines because of the type of fabric that you're working on. And one thing that's really cool is that with a dual feed, you can go from one kind of fabric to another and not have to worry about it. This is a real stretchy, sheer fabric. So if you ever work with home dec fabric, or you do costumes or anything like that, or work with sheer fabrics, then you're going to find that it can be problematic. So this has a beautiful seam, but I want to show you, if you haven't sewn on this fabric before, let me show you what happens if you stitch without having dual feed. If I disengage the dual feed, it now is going to stitch exactly like any sewing machine that is out there. And as I sew, you're going to notice that it bunches up. And that's what happens with sheer fabrics when you work without dual feed. So what an amazing difference in the quality of your stitch. Now, if you love getting a perfect straight stitch, that's possible on this machine too. The machine itself has a beautiful straight stitch, but it even comes with a special bobbin case. And this bobbin case is called a straight stitch bobbin case. And when you use this bobbin case in conjunction with the straight stitch setting, you're going to have a beautiful straight stitch, both top and bottom. So that's pretty fabulous as well. Now I want to show you a couple of other things on our machine. So I want to stitch, right now I don't have the dual feed engaged, so I'm just going to sew a regular seam. So if I'm sewing a seam for a quilt or for whatever it is, you got a nice little straight seam here. Can you see that? But if you look at the back, a lot of times you get some wibbles, and usually we will press those out. Now where that becomes a challenge is if it's on a side seam of a garment, we press it out, but after it's laundered, those little crinkles can come back. As well as if you're working with a quilt block, say you have a quilt block that's made up of smaller pieces and triangles and smaller squares to make a larger block. Well, by the time you have this shifting and you have to true up, your final block may not even be the size that you needed to begin with. So your whole quilt may be off. So that can be a challenge. So now let's put the dual feed on. And as I sew, of course, it's taking both the top and the bottom layers through at the same time, but I just want you to notice how smooth that back seam is compared to the first one. It's laying perfectly flat. So that's just a really, really fabulous feature on the machine. Now, if you're a quilter, I've got something really cool for you. So let's say you are doing chain piecing and you're doing the same seam length over and over. Well, the same thing can apply if you're a garment sewer and you want to do pin tucks or something like that, but you need the exact same seam length every time. So I'm going to come over here. So I have a straight stitch chosen, and I'm going to choose stitch repeat, and I want to choose the patchwork program. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow the machine to record the exact length of a seam or a stitch that you want to use. So all you have to do is take, you know, when you chain piece, you have like 2-inch squares, and you do 2-inch squares, 2-inch squares, 2-inch squares, one right after another. Well, we want to work with needle down. You always want to do that, right? Because you shove that next little set right up underneath the needle. So when I'm sewing, you sew the seam length, and when I'm done, I'm just going to tap the reverse key. Now it has memorized that. So now every time that I want to sew another set, all I have to do is stick it under, and then the machine's going to sew all by itself, and it stops automatically when it's time. And during that time, you can fiddle and get the next set of fabric ready to go. And you don't even have to worry about it not stopping when you want it to. So it's really a pretty handy thing, because if you're chain piecing, you know, pieces after pieces after pieces, it's nice to know that you can be free to think about other things all at the same time. Another thing that's really, really cool on the machine is, you know, we've talked about how a quality straight stitch is very important, but also it's the needle piercing power and how the machine feeds. Take a look right here. You see the little section in the front of the needle. They have added 3 more feed dogs. So there's actually 5 feed dogs on this machine, and what that does for us as sewers is it actually engages with the fabric sooner. So when you're working with sewing points or sewing small pieces of fabric, it's less likely to get hung up or get sucked down into the needle area, because it actually is working with the feed dogs sooner. So that's really pretty cool. Now, the other thing that's really neat about this machine is that it has an industrial strength needle piercing power, and it has a pulse motor. So what that means is when it comes up to heavy fabric, when it finds heavy fabric, instead of going, oh, I'm sorry, it's so heavy, I can't sew through that, it actually will pulse the needle like a little jackhammer to work its way down through the fabric. So that way it doesn't damage anything on the interior of the machine, or hopefully not not even break a needle. So that's a really pretty cool feature too. It also will sew crazy fast. So you have that going for you too. So you're going to have fun sewing on this FOF.